My guest today has seen hundreds of AI pitches and can spot a real agentic AI company from wrapper in 2 sentences. Sonia is managing partner at Zentara Ventures, founder of Dekode Health. 4 exits, 1 IPO, half a billion raised as a C-level exec. Today we get into what separates execution from hype in agentic AI and why the ROI gap must be a trust problem, not a tech problem. Let's get into it. Can you give our listener a quick pitch about your journey, about your exciting ride?
Sure. So I am based in San Francisco, California. My background is actually an interesting uh, background. It is engineering to product to marketing, and now I'm on the venture side. So I am an engineer by degree. I born and raised on the East Coast. I was recruited by a tech startup back in the day and coding, when I first came to Silicon Valley. And, I've spent time at early stage startups, large global enterprises in my career. Part one of my career was really in digital media tech. I feel like, when everybody kind of comes to Silicon Valley, they work in, digital media tech. So, and then about, 15 years ago, I purposefully changed that vertical to be more in the impact space. So today I'm very heavy in healthcare, which includes, for us, health tech, health and wellness, food and nutrition, and agriculture climate. We're very focused on the societal innovation space in general. So today I'm a managing partner at Zentara Ventures. We're a venture studio and syndicate of investors, and primarily, co-build with our portfolio companies, and we scale them up and we exit. So we are, particularly working with companies that have solutions toward one or more United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And again, in the 17 SDGs, we lean very much in healthcare. So it's been an interesting ride in my belt. I have 4 exits now, 1 IPO. And as a C-level executive, I've helped to raise over $500 million. So end to end, I've seen it all.
What an exciting journey. You have seen hundreds of pitches over last 18 months. What word shows up in the deck right now?
If you're seeing a pitch deck these days without the word AI in it, I mean, I'd probably be pleasantly surprised, right? But everything is like AI powered, AI driven, AI native, AI first, right? Don't necessarily just read hundreds of pitch decks. I mean, honestly, nobody has time for that. Our thesis is very, very focused. And we're sourcing, a specific type of portfolio company to work with. If you're coming into a pitch and you're talking about AI, right? Like 30 seconds of like it's going to buy you 30 seconds of goodwill. But you have to have, I would say, real specifics to back it up, right? And you have to be able to tell me like exactly what the use cases are that AI is solving in your business, where AI lives in your product, what data it's trained on, and what it's validated as output. And also, a question I like to ask founders is where the AI gets it wrong, because it does. So, you know, you really need to know kind of what's going on with the AI. And I think the founders that use AI more as a marketing layer, right? Infrastructure layer. So, meaning what they do is they kind of like wrap chat or Claude API, around like a spreadsheet and they call it a platform, right? I mean, that's not a company, it's a feature at best. So the word I actually want to see is really, in pitch decks is all about, the ROI, right? Show me exactly where you're spending on AI and what problem or use case it's solving and what the measurable outcome is. Because just throwing money at AI infrastructure, which we see a lot of, right, without a clear use case, it's just becomes overhead. So I think that the, founders who win are really the ones who can tell me, like, here's the use case, here's what it costs, here's what the returns are. And those are the conversations like I'm personally interested in having.
Is it a real AI versus a wrapper AI? How do you determine whether they are building the real AI solution versus just a wrapper around the product?
Yeah, the pitch deck is the pitch deck, right? This is where due diligence comes in. Also, where someone like myself who has a technical background, but had a long career as a chief marketing officer now on the venture side, right? I actually can be in the weeds to understand, right? Because otherwise, words are words are words, right? And so part of our due diligence process is really get into the weeds. I mean, what our venture studio does is we are co-building alongside our portfolio companies. So we literally see what's underlying, right? In the infrastructure. And we see, whether there was an actual problem or use case that AI is solving, or are they just using AI and going to look for problems? There's a big difference there.
What made you choose all these different lanes, product, engineering, and CMO?
A very long time ago when I started my career, I really wanted to understand how the different parts of business came together and grew and scaled and were successful, right? So having the background that I have, one, not many people out there can say that or that they've been successful at any parts of it, but I can. I've always been a very holistic, look at things holistically, right? Looking to build expertise in that holistic view of business and then see really how companies scale. And I feel like today, we need more people who can look at the business in its entirety and basically know how to orchestrate a symphony, right? And that's 100% of what I designed as my career. It's just that this was very intentional by design, by, getting a degree in engineering, going very deep, coding, building product, where you really never talk to customers, to then being in product and you're starting to talk to customers and starting to really understand what they want, to then going to the marketing side and saying, okay, here's what the client wants, right? The company, but it's not the same thing as what customers actually want. So did you build, what you actually should be building, or were you building in a black box? To now be over to the venture side, right? Which includes really helping companies figure out how they can start to scale, right? Because high growth and scale are totally different things. So I would say, it's been very intentional with depth, and then there's breadth, which to be honest has just come full circle now, being on the venture studio side.
Wonderful. And I was reading about this Jasper survey which says 91% of marketers use AI, but only one third of them use real agentic work. Past you have been one of 91%.
Yeah, I would say early in my career, right, the tools, they just weren't there, right? So even the most technical CMOs, right, we're working through agencies or other vendors who can abstract the tech, right, kind of out of what we're doing. So meaning you didn't technically need to understand what was under the hood, right, to be effective. But I think for me, the thing that has changed is at my core, I'm an engineer, right? It wasn't just a title. AI has been around for a while. We're just kind of now in the last 1 to 2 years really talking about it. When it started becoming a real force, I was not necessarily, learning a new language. It was almost just I was already familiar with it, right? And so I would say the difference between me and probably the 91% isn't that I actually you just use AI, right? I've literally built and launched AI product on my own. I have a company called Dekode Health that is an AI product that I built myself. So I feel like I'm not delegating AI to agencies or vendors or consultants, or just doing prompts and chat, right? The way to truly know and understand I believe today is actually to build product. And when you're building healthcare products, right, it's a whole other bucket and set of rules and regulations you have to go through. So I think, to be honest, again, that puts me in a completely different category, not just as a CMO, but really as an operator in general.
That operator mindset is so essential because you know what a pain it can occur when folks out there are building the company. I'm curious, every founder right now is pitching agentic somewhere in the deck. What's the one question you ask them to find out it's real agentic, or what's the tell that it isn't agentic?
The thing I like to ask is like, what's in your business that is not working right now? And like, how does AI or an agent fix that? Right? That's it. And if a founder can answer that super quickly in 2 sentences, like, great. If they cannot and they like pivot to something else, like, I already know there's a problem, right? Like, agentic AI is a solution, but I'm trying to understand the problem first, right? So I see founders that describe, right, what AI does, but not what it solves, right? So there's like a real big difference, right? So, like, for example, if you talk to a founder and they say like our agentic system like autonomously manages, our customer workflows, and we're losing 40, or 50% of leads at a handoff stage, and the agent closed that gap. Like, that's a feature description. The latter is really a business outcome, right? So, I feel like at this stage, because I understand AI at like a technical level. I've built product and launch. We're co-building with companies. We're bringing investment in. Like, I can spot, kind of issues pretty quickly. A lot of people are still in this world, or they're wrapping like a chat and Claude, right? And it becomes more of like a marketing layer. It's not. And the problem again with that is you're not going to see the ROI. And we already see this, right, in the media, where many companies are saying like they haven't seen any ROI, even though they've, let go of humans. They're putting more budget into AI, and we're just like really in that phase of, oh, whoa, how do we figure out where there's ROI? And that's exciting for us at Zentara, because that's what we, help with.
Has your bar changed in the room?
I think it's more like my patience has, right? I think, founders like when AI started becoming like really out there again, right? Everybody changed their URL to like .ai, right? So again, like there's many people out there, founders are overstating AI capability, right? They're not just pitching poorly anymore. And I think you have to be very careful because you're potentially taking on legal exposure where you don't know it exists, right? So I think again, like my advice is to truly start with like, why are you using AI? Where do you want to use it? I think you have to go in answering some of those bigger questions. How does it proliferate through your organization? You have to kind of really understand what's happening.
What should never get handed to an agent, even though it's technically capable of doing the task?
So, I would say the relationship that you have, with your customers should never be 100% AI. And remember, your employees are your first customers. I mean, everybody forgets that, right? In marketing, we don't forget that. Like, an agent can optimize the campaign, personalize your email, right? It can close like a support ticket, but it cannot, like, all that touchy feely, like, it cannot make someone feel seen, right? It can't, I feel, build trust over time. It can't walk into a room and jazz up your sales team and make them feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves, right? So, in my marketing career, having spent so many years building very authentic brands where there's a deep relationship between the company and the customer, and that was worth more than the product on the shelf, right? I can tell you that we built relationships like one human at a time. So you can for sure automate around it, but I don't think you can automate that itself.
Well said. Human touches can't be automated because that connection is built through course of time and it takes effort to maintain that connection. What do you see how marketing is evolving with agentic AI right now?
Yeah, so we're still, in the phase of using AI to like speed up our work, right? So in the past, where marketers really took a lot of time to like get their critical juices flowing and, use critical thinking to create, let's just say, copy, right, or design for ads that were attractive, to customers. We now just run it through chat and Claude. They're using AI tools to build the actual video, right? Or the actual ad or something, or your explainer video. I mean, I don't recommend any of this. It needs the human touch, it needs someone to review it. Humanized marketing is a really big thing. Discovering what your authentic brand looks like, feels like, viscerally, you know, the touch, the taste, the smell, in a sense, of your brand. All of that stuff still really matters to build trust. If you look at Instagram or Facebook and you see something, millions of people are commenting like, "Oh, that's AI. That's not even real." And then what happens is there's no trust. So you're affecting your brand's, like, the trust of your brand, by not incorporating the human elements of it, right? So I don't recommend that. Automating systems using AI that can also speed things up that, like, I didn't need to be doing anyway. But I think that what you should be doing as a marketer is really focusing on that critical thinking, that creative juices, the building the relationships. How does that, all come together in like beautiful language of marketing, beautiful design? That is 100% human, you know?
I feel healthcare is more regulated industry. How is agentic AI evolving the healthcare?
AI is obviously disrupting, kind of every, industry out there. There's kind of sometimes lines that you can cross. I would say that, to be honest, in any product, not just in health, is a line that I would say you should never cross, is a decision that would directly affect someone's health, and well-being, or their safety, right? Without a human in the process using their own critical thinking. That's where I don't think we should use AI. So what I mean by that is, like, in health specifically today, like, can AI can inform you and translate, and they can show you patterns. People ask, can AI diagnose? 100% it can diagnose. And technically today, there's actually, in my research, I think there's over like 1,500 FDA authorized AI medical devices on the market, in like radiology and imaging, doing exactly that, diagnosing, right? So the question in healthcare, I think, again, becomes, should it replace the clinician's judgment entirely, right? And I personally don't feel so. Not yet, or maybe, to be honest, not ever, because again, like, when you're dealing with health, if the AI gets it wrong, the consequences is not that you put up like a bad campaign, right? Or you missed a number. It's someone's life. So I don't think that any efficiency gain is kind of worth that trade, right? So there's just a lot of, I think, complexity when you're building in healthcare. And when it comes to I think this is also a great debate to have, because I'm sure there's people out there that, have a different opinion than I do.
Zooming out, Deloitte says 84% of companies investing in AI reports positive ROI. However, Reddit says it's mostly hype. Which is it, and why both can be true at once?
I haven't, read all of these studies, but the data that I've seen is showing that companies are obviously confident and they're spending in AI, and that the ROI is taking, longer than expected. But when it does show up, it's mostly in efficiency, right? Not revenue, right? So in the research, that I've done, about 20%, say, of organizations are actually seeing, ROI. So I think you're asking me, like, how can both narratives be true? And I think they can be true because they're coming at it from two different sides, right? They're measuring different things, right? So think about it this way. Enterprises report like positive ROI. They can be measuring like what in their company got faster and cheaper, right? Like automation of emails, code, creating content, support tickets, things like that. But then skeptics then start to ask, like, have those things fundamentally changed your business? Right. So there's kind of the two sides. So I think, like, both are correct. They're just looking at it, kind of from different angles. And really, I think companies winning in AI right now, it's like the ones who are picking the thing that's already broken in their company without even with or without AI. They automate it, they measure what's changed, and now they're moving on to the next, right? And companies that are not seeing ROI, they're ones that like bought a platform, announced like a transformation. They're like waiting for ROI to show up in their P&L because they're chasing a problem, right? And that it's not a tech problem. That's 100% an execution problem. And the execution is exactly what most of the AI, investments right now are missing. And again, it's 100% of why we built Zentara, because we know that companies need this kind of help on the execution side, which is why we co-build with our portfolio companies.
Tech saw 95,000 plus jobs cut in 2026, and nearly half of them were pinned to AI. Through analyst questions whether those companies had matured enough for AI to absorb the work, real capability, or convenient cover. What do you think?
Layoffs never make me happy, or excited that your business is becoming more efficient. I mean, at the end of the day, there's a human involved. We've had this, as we always do, like a first follower problem, right? Like, so company X, they start using AI, they automate a lot of stuff, they convince themselves they don't need as many people and they cut. And then it's just a snowball effect, right? Company B sees it, panics that company A is going to move far ahead, and then they just do the same thing, right? They don't want to get left behind. So they announce, layoffs and they pin it on like, hey, AI transformation, right? Even though they haven't even figured out how to use AI. And they don't even know if it can kind of give them ROI, right? So to me, that can just continues to be very silly. So, when you have companies that are cutting humans for a capability that they don't fully understand or have built yet, just to hit a narrative they think that Wall Street wants to hear. So, what is happening though, and I think, all of us who've been living in the Bay Area, we have seen this is quietly what happens is, there's not even like a press release about it. They start to hire humans back, right? It's like a different title, different team, it's the same work. Because guess what? It turns out the AI was not ready to absorb everything that was cut, and the number one casualty is in all of this is the trust. Because the employees who are part of it and are watching all this happen on the sidelines in real time, they're just completely exhausted, right? So you can restructure around a technology story like so many times before. Your best people, they're over it. They stop believing anything you say and they just leave on their own terms, right? They're just done with it. So I think companies have to be really careful um, about, again, knowing what they're using it for. And I think the companies out there that are going to understand that this is not about, not having humans be a part of the process, I think they're going to win.
There are so many companies which have turned back and hired immediately after the big riff. And that kills the motivation of the people who are already there because they have seen people leaving and now new folks joining. The pressure keeps pounding, and it's not good for the mental health of the person and the environment which is getting created in the company.
Take a solopreneur business, right? So today, can one person, ideate, build, launch, go to market, raise money, and scale a company, using AI? 100%. And actually, my kind of side thing, Dekode Health, like a perfect example. One person can do it all, but guess what? Even in that process, you need other people, right? I don't need more AI. I need people, right? You need to talk to people. You need to make sure you're building the right thing. You want to get their feedback. You want them to help you promote it, right? Like, you want to understand if your marketing is landing. We're going about it the wrong way if you're excited about just having like a fully autonomous and never having like a human being involved in anything. I mean, that can't even happen, like, again, even in the solopreneur journey, right? You are collaborating, connecting with other humans across that journey, regardless. So I would say the trust factor is the number one thing that I think about, when it comes to just, starting to blanket out and have this snowball effect of let's just get rid of everybody, you know?
Totally. What does execution means for you in 2026 that didn't exist a year ago?
I feel like a year ago, execution meant knowing how to deploy AI. I think now it's, more about knowing how do you build with it. Just plain and simple, like not a pilot or proof of concept, like an actual product that people can use. Because again, in that level of execution, you're understanding how the AI works, where it trips up, where it hallucinates, right? And what the benefits actually are. And I think that experience in general is really invaluable. And you don't get that from like doing the next certification and the next certification, right? You need the real world experience, and you need your hands kind of like, touching, feeling, like doing it. So I also feel like it doesn't really matter how old you are, what your title is. Like, if you haven't built something with AI, it's almost like you don't know what you're deploying capital into, right? Again, this is why I have a very interesting lens into all of this. When you have the ability to go really deep and see exactly where the AI is touching a business, you're orchestrating a symphony when you're running a business, right? That's when things start to make sense of like, where is the AI and where isn't it when you're deploying capital. I was like recently on this Zoom that was like a hackathon, and there's an 80-year-old man. It was so amazing. He built like on his own, he vibe coded and built his own AI product. And it was so, everybody on the call was like so excited for him. And I mean, and that's what it's all about, right? He just did it because he wanted to learn. He was retired, to keep learning and doing creative things, and it's never too late to start, you're never too old. So I would say, start thinking about like, is there something in your interest area that you would like to figure out, like, can I build a product around this? Again, it doesn't matter if you sell it or not. I think that experience is what really matters.
What do you see how things will change in 2027 and what future looks like to you?
This is probably a hot take, but that everybody and every company must use AI. It's not going to be a question. And if you're not, you're just not going to move forward. So again, I think that I see too many people out there that are also looking for new opportunities, that are caught up in like certificates. My number one thing is use this time and go build a product and go really understand, because AI has completely shifted not just everything we're doing here in the Valley, but just business in general. And if you don't understand that, then you basically have a lack of skills, right? And so and your skills might have been incredible for positions of the past, but that all is gone now, right? It's a must at a deeper level than it ever was. It's like a whole different ball game. So if people don't really jump in, I think they're 100% gonna get left behind, and then we're gonna have more positions being replaced by just the AI. So I think it is an absolute must now. Like every company must be using it, and every person I think must be building. I would say, even in the next 6 months, right? I think, we're going to continue to see just a lot of incredible innovation with AI and robotics in healthcare, right? I speak a lot about this in my personal brand, where Western medicine and kind of it's always been around. It's not around preventative care, right? It's kind of like the after your fact, you're sick. So I see AI now bringing this level of precision where we can take, real empowerment around our health. And, we're going to see a lot of like true innovation there. So I'm excited for just everybody, including myself, that are building in health and healthcare right now using AI, because it's finally going to be the precision lens that we've never had before. Um,
Anything you want to leave the audience with what we haven't touched on so far?
I would say just connect on LinkedIn. You can read up about me, my background, who we work with at Zentara. If I can help, I'm always happy to talk. And if you're interested in kind of what I've personally been building at Dekode Health, you can go to the website. It's decodehealth.com, but decode is spelled DEKODEHEALTH.com. And you can join a wait list there for the product. It's in private pilot right now. So if I can help, I'm always, willing to help. But yeah, no, thank you so much for having me.
Sonia, thank you for joining the podcast. If there is one line to take away with you, it's the only way to truly know AI is to build a product on your own. The only way to truly know AI is to build product on your own. Until next time, stay curious, keep building, and bring someone along for the ride.